Oi gente, eu sou a Isa, do Livros Ontem, Hoje e Sempre, e hoje eu tô aqui para apresentar a entrevista que a gente gravou com a Alwyn. Ela é autora de A Rebelde do Deserto e A Traidora do Trono, ambos publicados pela editora Seguinte, que foi responsável pelo evento mais incrível desse ano, a Flip-Hop. A gente gravou a entrevista lá, e eu queria agradecer a editora Seguinte pela incrível oportunidade que foi conversar com aquela mulher, e a Alwyn por ser tão fofa. Eu espero que vocês gostem.
No, I didn't find it difficult. I think young adult is sort of a different space than adult fantasy. I have heard horror stories from sort of fantasy and sci-fi for adults of male authors not being so great to female authors sometimes, but teen is, I think, a very inclusive genre, and I also think that it is dominated by women. All the teen authors that I was reading when I was, thinking about writing were all women. There were very few books I read by men, so it never occurred to me that it wouldn't be a possibility for me as a woman, and so I didn't come up with those challenges. I'm also a little bit oblivious to these things because I was raised, my parents always raised, me to sort of completely believe in myself, and the question of sexism was never an issue for me growing up, so sometimes I don't even notice when people are being terrible to me because of my gender, because I just have never thought of myself as lesser. Which is thanks to my upbringing, essentially. I think I would find it very hard to write anything without either magic or action. I wouldn't necessarily need both still, I don't think, but I think I'd find it hard to do without the other because I really admire for contemporary authors what they can do in terms of like the subtlety of emotion and keeping you gripped about simple stuff like school and daily life, and that's just not a skill I have apparently. It's funny because the Rebel was a whole bunch of different ideas brought together, but one of the ideas that's part of it was I just had this idea of a girl who was working at a convenience store late at night, and a boy rushes in and hides from the police under the counter, and I was just sort of like a fragment at the time, but in my mind that was contemporary, but I didn't know what he was running from, where it was going, how anything would work, and it ended up becoming part of the fantasy later, so I think that's my instinct, is to just be like, and then something explodes. I don't actually know how to progress the plot without explosions. Mute now if you don't want to hear any spoilers. Book 3 is, well, I described it yesterday as if this were sort of, it could be retitled as the Star Wars trilogy. So the first one is A New Hope, the second one is The Sultan Strikes Back. So this one is Return of the Blue-Eyed Bandit, essentially. So it's really about Amani. She spent the first book discovering, what it was like to be part of a group and figuring out that she had her power. Her second one, learning a bit more about it and sort of thinking on her own, being outside the rebellion, being a spy, and so this one is her. She's leading the charge, essentially. She needs to get everyone back. She's in charge of everyone else's life, so it's her really coming into the full potential of what she can do, and in terms of helping out the rebellion. And then in practical terms, I can tell you there is death and sexy times, both. The bad end of things and the good end of things. And walls of fire, and a supernatural being who even the people in the desert didn't necessarily think was real. So
I'm really excited.
Thank you. I'm excited for you guys to read it.
Yeah.
In my mind, always from the beginning, even in the first book, I sort of knew who he was going to be, even though you don't get to see him until the second book. But I sort of, figured that most people would have in their minds this image, because you only hear about him, so they'd have this image of him being sort of very villainous and very grotesque, or potentially this image of him being like the Sultan from Aladdin, of like a bit buffoonish and fat and stuff. And actually, he's a man who's held on to his country under very difficult circumstances for almost 2 decades, and so he's adept at fighting. And he killed all his family single-handed, so he's adept at fighting. He's led a country. He's very charismatic. He has 2 very attractive sons, at least that we've met, and genetics is a thing, so he's also quite attractive and charming. I actually had a funny conversation with another author friend of mine, and she was like, is it okay that I think the Sultan's quite hot? And I was like, well, if you think about it, he's your age, because she's a little bit older than me, she's in her early 30s. I was like, they're pretty pretty much 36, so he's your age, more so than, you know, the 18-year-old boys, the princes are your age. And she's like, oh my god, I keep doing that. So, but yeah, and I also really wanted him to bring a different point of view. I didn't want him to sort of be cackling and, you know, doing this. No villain thinks they're the villain. You're only the villain from someone else's point of view. From his point of view, the rebellion are the villains. They are destabilizing his country that he's fought very hard for. And he's, you know, he thinks that if they take over, everything will crumble because they're children who don't know how to run a country, whereas he's been doing it for 2 decades. And they're idealists, whereas he's practical. So it's all these different things, and so I wanted him to have sort of that charm and that point of view that was able to destabilize Amani's certainty, so that she had to question what she was fighting for and whether it was worth it without certainty. So that was such, but you know, also you then can't deny that he's charming. He strangled his wife to death with his bare hands. He's a terrible person. It's one thing to sort of lead a war and a different thing to run a country once you win the country. I mean, obviously I know how it winds up, so I'm trying to I think that he has a little bit of a way to go still in book 3 in order to get to grips with that. I also think that the country that they are going to take over, by the time they do it and the things that they do, will be a very different country to run than the one that his father ran. So there's a bit of a difference there that he benefits from. But I also think that he can't do it alone, and he knows that, and that's sort of seen in the rebellion, that he relies very much on Shazad to know more about him, more than him about sort of military strategy, and he relies very much on, you know, people who know the country better to sort of tell him how people are going to react. So I think in terms of ruling, he is aware that he would need to approach it the same way, not alone, not like a dictator like his father was.
If you were lost in the desert,
I would die. Sorry.
which book would you like to have with you?
Which book would I take with me? A survival guide for the desert? No.
How would you find water in the desert?
My desert island book, I mean, if I could take more than one, if I could take a box set, it would be Harry Potter probably. That would keep me busy the longest. Or Game of Thrones, one of those 2 box sets. A single book, you know what I might take? I might take the 12 Christmas Stories that was edited by Stephanie Perkins. I don't know if that was translated over here. It was My True Love Gave to Me. Because there's 12 different authors and 12 different stories, and there's one in particular that I always read. It just makes me so warm and happy inside every time I read it. And so I think that, you know, even when I was in dire situations, I could read that and think like,
and be glad.
And also, if I was in the desert, it'd be quite hot, and they're Christmas stories, so it's cold in all of them, so I could mentally cool myself down. So yeah, it's called, in English, it's called My True Love Gave to Me. Long distance.
Nice.
I choose a bow and arrow. I'm actually, I mean, not anymore, but when I went to summer camp, I always used to do archery, and I was a half-decent shot with a bow.
That's
when
nice.
I was 14,
Okay.
half my life ago.
What did you stop?
I just, you know, it's just one of those things that I only ever did at summer camp. And I think the unfortunate thing is that when you're a teenager, you get to try all sorts of different stuff out, and you get to be an archer or a swimmer or a sailor if you want. And then when you're an adult, they expect you to be good at it. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, if you're going to continue judo or whatever, then you need to actually be good at it, which is not something I am. I have to go back to Harry Potter, don't we all? Are we all still waiting for our Hogwarts letter?
Yes.
It's gonna come any day now, guys. It's a thing. Yeah, I think I'd want to go to Hogwarts. I think that would definitely be my choice.
What's your house?
Hufflepuff.
Oh, I'm Ravenclaw. She's Gryffindor.
I love Brazil. I'm so glad that I extended my trip and I was 3 days in Rio before coming to Sao Paulo, so I got to sort of see the city, see the beach, see the jungle, see the monkeys, and sort of experience it, and then come here and have a completely different experience, getting to meet everyone and talk to people. I feel it's been so lovely. Everyone keeps telling me that I'm lovely, and I'm like, no, you guys are the lovely ones. It's easy to be nice when people are being so kind to you. But yeah, Brazilian Rangers have been wonderful. You guys make me feel like a rock star. It's fantastic. So thank you for having me. Like your favorite book ever, it's exactly like that. No, I'm joking.
You should definitely read that.
If you like cross-dressing girls and hot boys and adventure, then it's the book for you, and I hope you'll check it out.
Bom, gente, essa foi a entrevista. Eu espero que vocês tenham gostado. Foi uma oportunidade incrível gravar e depois editar esse vídeo. Não esquece de curtir esse vídeo, se inscrever no canal que acabou de nascer e mostrar para os amigos fãs. E não esquece, vai ler A Rebelde do Deserto, porque esse livro é muito bom. Tchau!